This is Truth in Media. I'm Ben Swan, and on today's show, an exclusive interview with Dr. Judy Mikovits. You have seen her in the Plandemic movie that has been viewed tens of millions of times around the world, and yet social media companies keep pulling it down. Why is that? And it's not just social media companies that are pulling the video. There have been dozens of articles written about Judy Mikovits over the last couple of weeks, and they have engaged in an incredible amount of character assassination, absolutely destroying her character while at the same time refusing to deal with the issues and debate the issues that she brought up during her interview.
Oh, it's the single most, as you mentioned, the single most important thing at every level, the journals, the grant, the funding.
Our exclusive interview right now on Truth in Media. Hey there, guys. Thanks for watching the podcast today. So a couple of things. We're going to be talking today with Dr. Judy Mikovits and going through with her this incredible experience that she's had over the last few weeks, because of course she was the main interview in part of a new documentary coming out called Plandemic. So many of you have already seen it. What's fascinating to me is not just how Dr. Judy Mikovits has been just demonized in the media over the last few weeks, but it's the exact same playbook that has been used over and over and over again. Her Wikipedia page has been locked. It is being changed dozens of times every minute. We've seen an incredible amount of articles about her just absolutely laying waste to her character, claiming that she stole documents and stole information from a lab that she was working for, essentially painting her as a criminal. But what all these so-called fact checks have in common is that they all seem to completely ignore the substance of what was said during her interview. And there was one thing in particular that stood out to me as the most important issue that was discussst during that little Plandemic clip. Because it's not the entirety, by the way, of this documentary when it's finished. It was just a 25-minute long clip of it. But that clip included a piece of information that I think is so critically important for people to understand. It is so vitally important that we understand it, that if the majority of the public did understand it, if the majority of the public was able to actually come to terms with what was said, it would force a complete upending of the medical system in America. And that is the idea that those who were in power in NIAID or the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, or the CDC, that those doctors have the ability to patent drugs that they are a part of discovering. And not just patent them, but then hold these very high-profile government positions where they can steer public policy in favor of drugs that they can personally, financially benefit from and do. It is incredible when you think about it. How does someone have the ability to hold a patent and also create public policy for medicine that directly affects the patent that they hold? How does that system take place? When did it start? And why is it still in place? And as we sit in the middle of a pandemic right now, how can we not question that issue? So joining me right now to talk about this, Dr. Judy Mikovits, thanks for being with me. Obviously, you've done a lot of interviews over the last couple of weeks, and there's just a couple of things I really want to touch on, and I want to begin by actually raising a couple questions for you, because one of the claims that's been made over the last few weeks has been from those who say that Judy Mikovits cannot be trusted, that she actually stole documents from the lab she was working at. She claims that she was never arrested or that she was never had a warrant out for her arrest, and they say that they're debunking that fact. I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that. Is any of that true? Did you steal items from the lab you were working for, and how did this all play out?
Yeah, in fact, that is absolutely, totally false. And I have addressed that with literally for a decade, almost a decade or more. What I was actually arrested for was written in in Science, the journal. Basically, it said that I was arrested on felony charges of being a fugitive from justice, but it went on to say that nobody issued a warrant, whether it, either Washoe County, Reno, Sparks, nobody in Nevada, where the institute I worked with was, nobody in Ventura, the police who actually arrested me, no warrant. My house was thoroughly searched. My friend's house was thoroughly searched, and nothing was found. So there never was a charge on to base the fugitive from justice felony charge.
Dr. Mikovits shared a series of documents through her attorney to prove her statements, including this original booking photo and booking sheet from November 18, 2011. It is correct that while it was reported that Judy Mikovits was arrested on a fugitive from justice charge, that is only a secondary charge. But take a look. On her booking form, no primary charge is listed.
I was held in jail for 5 days on no bail, with no attorney, so with no judge, against every due process. As I said, my house was searched without a warrant. There was no property. There was no theft. And this actually was a part of, it was actually fabricated.
I was also sent a copy of the original warrants for Mikovits. The warrant is stamped by the University of Nevada, Reno Police Services, but in fact has no signature of the Superior Court judge. All of these documents, by the way, are now part of a civil lawsuit filed by Mikovits.
And I have evidence proof of affidavits in a civil case that the Institute, Harvey and Annette Whittemore, filed illegally, and we responded to that on November 4th. They had already filed it with four affidavits that basically frame me up for stealing these things, when in fact the night, and remember, this is November 4th, and I was ultimately jailed on November 18th. We have two books, Plague, that came out on November of 2014, and Plague of Corruption, which we actually started writing in August of 14, when I learned how much deeper the Plague of Corruption went, and why the notebooks, and why this was fabricated this way, and how Tony Fauci and the NIAID actually paid them off. You can see it again. Embattled institute keeps grants. No, an institute that commits misappropriation of federal funds and Medicare fraud, selling an unvalidated diagnostic test knowingly and taking reagents out of the lab and paying personnel who haven't worked in the lab. That kind of an institute wouldn't retain a principal investigator's grant unless, of course, there was a reason to pay them for their crimes. And this is exactly what was happened. I was fired September 29th for insolence and insubordination, and I admit I was rude when I said I will not allow you to misappropriate federal funds. I was given a direct order to misappropriate federal funds. Everything in the media, everything in Wikipedia writes a lie. No, I never stole notebooks.
And I think more than anything, and as you lay all this out, so I've been through a lot of this personally myself. I understand exactly where you're coming from. But I also think it's important as we talk about this to help viewers to understand what this tactic is, so that they can also learn how to recognize it, right? Because you are not the first, and you won't be the last person that this happens to. But there's a very clear playbook and how it all plays out. One is the articles, right? These articles all appear at the exact same time. They all show up like being published at the same time in the usual suspects: Daily Beast, Crooks and Liars, as you said, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. They'll all suddenly pop up with the same articles on them. USA Today. They'll call themselves fact checks, but they don't actually check the facts of anything you say. But one thing that I have learned over the years is that when these attacks come, you can usually find why they're coming. by looking at the one issue that they won't discuss. So all the attacks that they'll bring against you and all the things they'll say about you, but what are the issues that you mention that they stay far, far away from? They never even come up because it's almost as if they're terrified of those becoming a part of the public consciousness. I thought the most shocking thing you talked about, and I consider myself to be a journalist who knows a lot about a lot of things. And one of the things I did not know until your interview was how many people working in the public sector who work for organizations like the NIH and the CDC have the ability to patent a drug and then have the ability to shape the actual policies, like Anthony Fauci is every day, of the country toward the profit that he can make from royalties from that drug. And I thought the fact that you brought this up, this is so critically important that I truly believe it's part of the reason there's been such a vigorous attack against your character and against this attempt to slander you. Can you quickly, we only have about 2 minutes here, just share with us how important of an issue is this moving forward for people to understand the conflict of interest here?
Oh, it's the single most, as you mentioned, the single most important thing at every level, the journals, the grant, the funding. So you don't get a job if you don't have the funding, if you don't publish in the journals who are controlling the message. And if you don't get it, if you don't give these talks, you don't get the patent, and you shouldn't have the patent. Universities who are funded by NIH shouldn't have patents. And that's when these conflicts changed, was the 1983 or 4 Bayh-Dole Act, the senator from Utah, and Bayh, B-A-Y-H, and Bob Dole. That changed everything, and the drug costs. We wouldn't be experiencing anywhere near the drug costs. The patents are on things, as you said, Tony Fauci steering toward remdesivir when we have solutions that are 70-year-old drugs that cost pennies on the dollar, and including other immune therapies that could prevent these diseases from ever happening. So our entire government is steering towards where you can't make label claims for simple vitamin C or supplements that cost nothing, and driving everything towards drugs, and they have the patents.
Yeah, it's absolutely shocking. I'm sure you've seen your Wikipedia page in the last couple of days. What's fascinating, again, that people need to know this. First of all, Wikipedia is a joke. We all know that. They did the same thing to you that they did to me, though, which was they locked your page so that it cannot be changed unless you are approved to make changes. And then if you go and look at the history, there are people making changes to that page every few seconds. It's like every 12 seconds, there is a new edit being made to your page. It happened to me a few years ago, the exact same process. But it's important for people to understand how this works, because this concept of unity and collusion within the media space, within the tech space, within the medical space, within the political space, it is killing us as a country. It is destroying knowledge. It is destroying education. It is destroying an informed public. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, it's destroying everything about the fabric of our society. Honest reporters who try to do an honest job get threatened with their careers. Honest scientists are threatened, and those threats are carried out. And that's why a mugshot was run in science. A fake mugshot, by the way, because there was never a charge. I'm just going to keep saying this. A felony charges of fugitive from justice. You can't be a fugitive if you don't have a parking ticket. This is crazy, and Tony Fauci has that. It stands to this day, or it did the last time it was at the National Cancer Institute. November 15th, 2016. It still said Judy Mikovits is felony fugitive from justice, and they attempted to detain me on that day, and I got out that door quick.
Oh, Dr. Judy Mikovits, thanks so much for your time. Guys, thanks for tuning in, and thanks for continuing to share this content. I don't know what's going to happen with this particular interview, if Facebook and YouTube will pull it down. I suspect they probably will. But I encourage you to share it as much as you possibly can, and stay tuned, because in the next couple of days, we're going to have some very important announcements about the platform that we are working to build, because I believe that there has never been a time more important to create a free speech platform where voices can be heard and dissension is allowed. The time for it is absolutely right now, and we want you to be a part of it. More on that coming up in the next couple of days. Until then, I'll see you soon.